Our Mark McKay spoke with cardiologist Dr. Chandan Devareddy about the precautions and guidelines a team can take when it comes to screening players.
Heart attack is essentially stoppage of blood flow to the heart muscle. The most common cause of heart attack, as we know it by that definition, is actually some cessation of blood flow to the heart muscle, which most of the time is caused by coronary atherosclerosis, which is not the etiology that you would think of in the young athlete. In the young athlete, the most common cause of death overall, all causes, is actually sudden cardiac death. And if we break down sudden cardiac death in that population by causes, the most common cause is actually a condition that's familial and genetic called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is actually one of the most common genetic cardiac conditions that is in the human population. Besides that, there are a lot of rare causes in the young athletic population, such as anomalies of coronary blood flow, electrical abnormalities, but this is most likely not a classic heart attack as we think of it in the general population.
Paramedics were immediately at the player's side when he collapsed on the turf Saturday. Doctor, how important was that? How much did that make a difference?
Time is heart muscle. That's the motto that we go by in the cardiology community. So the fact that the care providers were there, got to him immediately. The word was that defibrillators were available, which is crucial in sporting events and arenas. I think hopefully if he makes it, that will be a crucial aspect of his recovery.
Let's talk testing. How involved and how costly is the testing that perhaps could have caught this?
Testing is very controversial in the medical community as far as what type of testing, when to screen, how to screen. In the statement that you had mentioned, they did describe a cardiovascular exam, but that's not really described in detail in that statement. Does that mean a physical exam? Does that mean a physical exam plus an EKG? This varies from country to country based on what the recommendations are. The U.S. has actually not advocated EKGs, but that's very controversial. And internationally, there are some bodies that have had very close monitoring of this on a population basis, such as in Italy, where they say that EKGs make a huge difference in detecting this in the population.
With clubs investing so much money in their players, certainly wouldn't it be worth to spend the money to get these tests done?
Well, we don't know if they did do EKG screening or not. And even with EKG screening, sometimes this isn't caught. For the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that we were discussing, about 70% of the time, the first incidence of that being diagnosed is with a sudden cardiac death episode. So it can be a difficult thing to screen. We don't know if they screen with EKGs or not. Hopefully they had in the past. Another thing that helps tremendously is knowing what the family history is. A lot of times these type of conditions can pass on from generation to generation, and whether Mr. Mwamba knew his family history or not from this standpoint, we don't know.
And I think a lot of fans wonder, can being overworked or playing too many matches, for instance, bring on cardiac arrest, or is it simply a genetic? Do we know?
Well, for athletes at this level, these gentlemen are trained to compete day in and day out. Now, of course, if they're pushing themselves beyond the human limits in terms of how well hydrated they are, how well their electrolyte balances are, you can predispose even the most competitive athlete to abnormal heart rhythms and strain on the heart muscle. But from our experience in previous history and previous cases, this likely has some underlying cause to it, more than just that.